This is the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. AWS is fond of saying security is job zero. That means it's nobody in particular's job, which means it falls to the rest of us. Just the news you need to know, none of the fluff.
And we're back playing games with security in AWS. Thanks for your patience. reInvent took a lot of time, and honestly, this podcast was one of the things that had to slip. Let's see what we missed. Lots, but only a few to really dive into. The first is that I feel a little bit constrained in how to talk about this one, to be very direct. The headline is, Infosys leaked full admin access AWS keys on PyPy for over a year. You'll notice, if you look closely, that I rarely pick on Infosys. As much as I love tweaking the noses of large companies, my wife is their U.S. head of commercial litigation, and I aspire to not create both professional and personal risk for myself at the same time. It always feels a little biting the hand that feeds me to publicly castigate the company that pays my health insurance. So all I'm doing on this one is just mentioning what happened. There's a link in the show notes, and folks can make up their own mind. I'm just going to sit over here quietly and try to distract my wife from listening to this episode by way of noisy toddler. And yeah, also, it's not lost on me that someone in AWS's legal department just realized that they're possibly one senior hire away from me going away and never bothering the company again. Rackspace has suffered a ransomware attack and likely destroyed the last vestiges of what was once, and I swear I'm not making this up, a dream company that I aspired to one day be qualified enough to work for. This episode is brought to you in part by our friends at Veeam. Do you care about backups? Of course you don't. Nobody cares about backups. Stop lying to yourselves. You care about restores, usually right after you didn't care enough about backups. If you're tired of the vulnerabilities, costs, and slow recoveries when using snapshots to restore your data, assuming that you even have them at all, living in AWS land, there's an alternative for you. Check out Veeam. That's Veeam for secure, zero-fuss AWS backup that won't leave you high and dry when it's time to restore. Stop taking chances with your data. Talk to Veeam. My thanks to them for sponsoring this ridiculous podcast. AWS had a couple of interesting releases. Well, there were a lot of interesting releases, but these are the two that are worth mentioning. AWS Security Hub now integrates with Control Tower, and that's handy, but I do wonder how much pain I'm in for when I activate this on my environment with Control Tower, where I've been using Security Hub for months already. I'll figure it out so you all don't have to. And at reInvent, there were a lot of announcements, but the one that I want to draw attention to is AWS Verified Access. It's in preview. The idea is that it offers VPN-less secure network access to corporate applications. There are a lot of AWS security announcements, but this is the one that I see the most buzz around. This is the one that I see has the most potential for solving customer problems. We'll dive into it. And as far as tools go, this is new to me. OpenSourceSecurityIndex.io is a list of the most popular and fastest growing open source security projects on GitHub. Given that the alternative is vendor stuff that seems to cost an arm and a leg, and for hobby projects that we don't use them, this is worth looking into. And that's what happened last week in AWS security. We'll talk more soon.
Thank you for listening to the AWS Morning Brief Security Edition. For the latest in AWS security that actually matters, please follow AWS Morning Brief on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever the hell it is you find the dulcet tones of my voice. And be sure to sign up for the Last Week in AWS newsletter at lastweekinaws.com.
This has been a Humble Pod production. Stay humble.